Welcome to Shades of Us. I'm your host, Daryl Brown. January is a month of new beginnings, which prompted us to look back at how we started as a web series at first, and today became a TV show all about identity.
Now here's some of the first guests of the web series who invited us for a conversation and helped start our journey.
First stop, Bushwick, Brooklyn, where graffiti reigns supreme. Let's now visit an artist who uses that style along with painting to tell his own story under the influence of the city and culture that surrounds him.
According to a 2021 research on graffiti, for those who create it, graffiti is an expression of identity and an outlet for creativity, social connection, and achievement.
Who knows how much time we've got left? I'm almost 50 at this point, so there's not a whole lot of time to screw around. I got a lot of important work that I want to make. Hi, my name is Tim Okamura, and I'm an artist working in Bushwick, Brooklyn. I'm originally from Edmonton, Canada, but I've been in New York City about 26 years and been working hard since the day I got here. I think my style artistically is something that evolved in a really organic way. I was always interested in painting the figure and working on portraiture from the time that I was young. My interest was really motivated by making paintings of people that I hadn't seen painted before. Being half Japanese and not really having other friends that looked like me or had the same stories shaped my vision of the world. Everybody can have a different story and a different background and look different, but there's a commonality. My father's Japanese, my mother's from Newfoundland, her heritage is British. In this day and age, we all have these crazy, complex backstories and all these different influences, and we're really a product of so many things. It's quite a package, but I'm glad to be me. Living in a very multicultural city like New York has certainly had an impact on the work, primarily the people that I encounter and all the stories that are being told. I was lucky in my experience growing up that I had a very sort of multicultural, little bubble that I kind of lived in and with my friends and the people that I loved. It wasn't a huge contrast in terms of that diversity, but it certainly was in terms of the edginess of this urban environment. I think that I moved to New York at the exact time where my sort of love of graffiti and hip hop was really in full bloom. Graffiti started to develop from kind of simple tags and started to evolve and get more and more into designing these complex letter forms. I wanted to find ways to integrate that into my work and make it a part of what I was doing. So I was still holding it down, in terms of painting the figure in a realistic way. I also wanted to just celebrate the positive and celebrate beauty. So my search for that took me down a particular path. I didn't think too much about the correlation between, let's say, me painting, African-American women and me not being an African-American woman. I just didn't consider it as being an issue. I think more of what's inside this person, what's their spirit about, what's their energy about, and that's what I try to connect with. I think that it's interesting, though, in this day and age where people want to define you, first of all. I feel very connected to the Japanese side, but I also I understand the British side and the Newfoundlander in my mother and that kind of very sort of rustic sort of aspect of how she grew up too. It's fun for me to think about how much of an unusual formula that is, and then the work that I've undertaken. I think that I've always considered the work to be mostly personal, actually. I think that in the past also maybe I felt that the work was kind of conservative in terms of messaging and I wasn't being overtly political. I think that I just was focusing on the people that I was painting for the most part and letting them kind of speak for themselves. As time has gone on, and certainly I think we are going through a cultural revolution right now, I don't necessarily feel pressure to get more political with the work, but I think that I'm more clear now with my message, and that's really one of unity. When it comes to talking about humans and the word race comes up, it's unavoidable, but for me, it's a misnomer. There's really only one race. There's a human race. Race is viewed in American culture in a very complex way. I think that the problem is a lot of people have been programmed. When you're born, your natural state of being is what they call tabula rasa, or a blank slate. You don't think anything bad about somebody that doesn't look like you. until somebody tells you. Some of those stories and those things that are being passed down are starting to fade and dissipate. And I think that some of the younger generation aren't longer telling those stories to their kids. I don't have children. I hope to have at least one child at some point. I think that the path that I've been on has been pretty intense, as an artist. In terms of telling my children about my identity or who I am, it's just gonna be honest. I'm an amalgamation of all these different influences. My parents, they never pressured me. They encouraged what they saw me gravitating towards and helped to grow that, but they never tried to force me into a box. As far as an artist, you always want to expose your work to different audiences and to grow your audience, and for me, of course, it's globally. I think that the work is also growing in terms of its content, and I think that naturally that's going to find its own audience as well. As an artist, I want to challenge people too. I think a good artist has to. We're supposed to create dialogue, we're supposed to ask questions. It's going to attract whatever feedback it does. I can only control the work and try to do the best work I can. I'm not going to continue doing exactly what I'm doing now for the next 30 years. There's more people in this world than you think who are just into love and celebrating humans and good painting and good portraiture, and the rest doesn't matter to them. And that's really encouraging for me because I meet them all the time. This very diverse group of people that respond to the work, and that's so uplifting for me.
According to a 2022 Pew study on the makeup of multiracial families, the number of people identifying as more than one race nearly doubled between 2010 and 2020.
Let's meet another New Yorker, a comedian who uses a podcast to explore the reality that multiracial families are familiar with.
Camille's support is much more from a 30,000-foot level.
I just keep him, from jumping off the ledge.
Hi, my name's Alex Barnett. I'm a comic. I live here in New York City. This is my wife, Camille. We're an interracial couple. We have a son who's now 6, who's biracial.
I would describe my husband as an extremely intelligent person first and foremost. He's the most well-read person I know.
When I started doing comedy, what I really liked was it was a chance to write your own material, but then act it out and get that sort of instant feedback. Like some of the guys in the room, in my 20s, I was 6'5", right? And black, right? If you've ever been on stage, you know it's very addictive. It's an adrenaline rush, even when it's bad. But people still can't seem to get their arms around, how is this black woman with this white guy, and there's this complicated backstory? She's an R&B singer and I'm her agent. And... Keep up, people, keep up, come on, let's go. I started doing it more and more and really, really took to it.
I always thought he was funny, so, it was my pleasure to support him in that endeavor. But now that he's more established, honestly, I haven't seen him perform in years. I'm kind of ashamed to say. How funny is Alex at home? Not at all. For a comedian.
I created a platform called Multiracial Media where we showcase the voices of the multiracial community, mostly through artistic expression, but also through news articles and so forth, and video. The podcast, Multiracial Family Man, that one I started actually first, before the website, as a way of connecting to the multiracial communities when I was home, because I couldn't necessarily be out every night performing the way I had been before our son was born. I just started by interviewing people who were either themselves multiracial or whose work had some implication for the multiracial community.
I just think it's admirable that he's so proud to be in a multiracial relationship, that he extends that pride by embracing through his podcast and the website. I don't think we've experienced any negative backlash as a couple. I can't recall anything really.
Nothing direct or overt, but we've definitely gotten looks, and Camille had comments.
Sometimes, my son and I will be at the school and our son will say, "Mommy," and sometimes, a white person will kind of do a double take, "Oh, you're not the babysitter, you're not the nanny, you're his mother."
I don't think he's really fully aware of race as a social issue. I think he's clearly aware that his parents have different skin colors, and he's brought that up a couple of times. Fortunately for us, we haven't had an experience where he's been the target of any racism, or either directly toward him or indirectly toward us.
The fact that we expose him to both sides of his family really helps him to understand that he's maybe a little bit more complex than his friends that are just black or just white. I don't want him to pick. I want him to identify himself as biracial.
I do care. I want him to be proud of everything he is. So I wouldn't want him to pick one or another because he's not proud of one part of his heritage. I am the co-creator of a cartoon strip called The Bronze Panther, and my co-creator is a really gifted artist named Andre Ramon Allen. We had this idea that we would do a comic strip about a 4-year-old superhero who was biracial. There was sort of a takeoff on Black Panther and the Black Panthers. The superhero, of course, has no superpowers whatsoever, and all he has is a towel as a cape and a teddy bear who can talk, who's sort of his adult conscience. I wanted our son to have something he could look up to in the arts and in comic strip, and I thought, well, the best way to do is we'll make him a superhero.
I think it's a great portrayal of our son and a great outlet to address multiracial issues with children.
I have a blog on my comedy website, and what looms large in my life is that I am 50, and I have a son who's 6, and that's a pretty big gap. The idea was to kind of give the middle-aged dad's view of life. Hopefully somewhere in there will be some nuggets of truth or advice that he can utilize, or at a minimum at least he'll see that I was very well intentioned and only wanted the best for him, and that'll make him feel good. 32 years ago, my classmates said I was the most likely to succeed, and that was nice of them. It felt good at the time, but I can tell you for most of the years since then I haven't felt very successful. I don't have that much money or any real fame or power. I've never owned a home or purchased a new car or created an app. And despite the fact that I'm a comedian, Mommy basically thinks I'm unfunny. And of course, I get to be your daddy, which is pretty awesome. So I hope you're as successful as me in your life. Truth is, I hope you're even more successful. The success comes from doing what you love and being with the folks you love. Just succeed and the rest will take care of itself. And I'll try to do the same. Love always, Daddy.
I guess it would be nice for him, later in life to go back and look at it, kind of like immortalizing your thoughts as they're happening as he's growing.
Yes, in real time. That's a nice way of putting it.
Yes.
Especially for someone who doesn't read my work.
Well, what happens when he says, Dad, I need to choose between being black or white? And even if he doesn't want to choose, someone's going to make him, right? And that somebody is me. No, here's why. Because we're struggling financially, okay? So when it's time for him to go to college, when that financial aid form comes, I'll be like, you check that box marked black.
We'll be back after this break. Finding oneself can take a lot of reflection and often some deep digging into family history, which brings us to our next segment, a filmmaker who turned to his family to ask some very tough questions.
My name is Octavio Warnock Graham. In many cases, I can be whatever you want me to be. Some of the things that people have claimed me as is Greek, Israeli, Puerto Rican, white, black. I can pass for almost anything. I am European and African American. My mother's white. I was raised by her my whole life. So my mom had me out of wedlock. She raised me until I was about 4 years old, just she and I. And she met this amazing man, his name's David Graham, and he adopted me. You know, growing up in my community in the Midwest, there's really a strong sense of family. You have a mother and you have a father, and that makes the family. Nobody in my family looks like me. The brother and sister that I grew up with are very pale skin, they've got light red hair, and I look like an oddball in this family. When I looked in the mirror, I would see myself as the same as the people in my community. There was a really difficult period for me from basically 6th grade to high school, where, for lack of a better word, I was a pariah, partly because of my race. And I really had some severe self-esteem issues. And it wasn't until I got to the East Coast that I started going, okay, it's not the end of the world if I'm black. I went to a college in New York State. It was really the first time that I got out of the monoculture of the Midwest. There were people who came from different backgrounds, who were of different race, who had different cultural experiences, and it was really the first time that I felt like I wasn't an outsider. I started my master's thesis film, which is Silences. Silences is a personal documentary that really asks the question, what were the circumstances around which my mother felt it necessary to deny my blackness?
You're telling me that all the lies that you told was to protect me?
No.
There was nothing else besides that?
There were things and people and issues that needed to stay out of my house. And the only way to keep them out was to shut it down.
There's a scene in the movie where my grandmother and we were cooking together.
When did Harriet tell you I was black?
Harriet didn't tell me ever you were black because you're not black.
I think that gives a real insight to how the community that I grew up in perceives blackness. I have almost no cultural experience with the African American community. The identity that I have now is a part of a larger journey to reach out to my birth father and find out about my story from his point of view and his perspective. When I was 28, I asked my mother for my birth father's name and I did a Yahoo search. We have a great relationship. It's developing, it's blooming. I talk to him on a regular basis. I have 3 sisters, I talk to them on a regular basis. I don't think I would be the person I am today without having made that film. I have a 9-year-old daughter, her name's Zora, and there's a real impetus to make sure that she has all of her story being in a community of people who all share that uniqueness that my daughter and I have. I hope will really begin laying the foundation for how she goes through her own journey of self-identification. There's a tendency in this country to demand people to say, what are you? And as a mixed race person, whether it's a privilege or some other quality, I have been given permission to straddle the color lines. The idea of us being in a post-racial society is completely false. There are conversations I hear when people claim me as a white person that they would never say in front of a black community. And as a person who is mixed race, I've been treated in ways that nobody in the white community ever gets treated, and it is something that has to be addressed. Today, I self-identify as a multiracial or biracial person.
And finally, we revisit an African-American woman of mixed heritage who took that background to open up a wider conversation around black women through her art.
When I look at the ways in which black people are depicted generally in Western media, I don't recognize the people. They're stereotypes, they're flat images. They're not people that we can really identify in that personal, human-connected kind of way. My name is Nina Buxenbaum. Currently, I'm an associate professor at York College. I teach drawing and painting. I really just see myself as pieces that make a whole, and then I paint that. The Topsy-Turvy doll is an image that I started using back in 2001. I started exploring that idea of this double-sided figure where you have one figure on one side veiled by this long billowy dress, and then when you turn that over, there's a completely different figure underneath. When I was thinking about the images that are really personal to me, that was the image that came to mind. My mother is from New Orleans, Louisiana. She is a mixture of African, French, Scottish, and Native American. My father is German, Jewish American. My parents divorced when I was 6, and so I was raised primarily by my mother. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I am the youngest of 3 siblings. On the one hand, that was helpful to have other biracial family members because I didn't know a lot of people who had the same mixture that I had. Both of my parents were very politically active, very socially progressive, and so we had lots of conversations about what my racial identity was and then how the world was going to see me, which would not always be the same. I identified the way that my mother identified, and I look like my mother. She identifies as a black woman. I was going to identify as a black woman. Well, I'm a figurative representational painter, and for me, it's always been really important to place the Black figure within that Western traditional style. I missed seeing Black women and brown people depicted in these images in ways that were not necessarily as the servants. You didn't see them ever as central figures within a painting, and you certainly didn't see them as icons of beauty. When I make images of people of color from a personal space, it becomes political because it's an image of a Black body. As much as we want to see the world as black and white, it just isn't, right? It's shades of gray, there is ambiguity, there is nuance to us as individuals and to us as members of society. I think when I use myself in my imagery, it's often a way to speak very directly to how I am experiencing my own racial identity or my own identity as a woman. I have 2 children. My daughter is 8 and my son is 6. I've done several paintings of my daughter because, one, she loves to ham it up, right? She just, paint me, mommy, paint me, mommy. But she has this, amazing, beautiful hair. And I think she's sort of emblematic of this mixture, like how we are becoming increasingly biracial. So I'm starting to talk to my children about the history because I want them to understand that there is no one specific way to look. It's about a shared history. It's about a shared culture. And I want them to be proud of that. Teaching on the college level allows me to continue to be inspired by the community I work in, as I find my students are incredibly thoughtful, inspiring people. The artist needs to be able to explain, needs to be able to have that conversation, because it's always hard work. And so that's what I try to encourage in my classroom, is this engagement with the image, questioning of the image. Don't just look at what is the surface, but really try to find the deeper meaning for yourself. I actually think there's more space for my work outside of New York. Currently, I live in Bethel, Connecticut. Out here, I think that people kind of appreciate the figurative nature of my work, but also the social political commentary. The way that I work, I start, with an underpainting and then I work in layers on top. When you add texture, it has a different experience than a drawing. It's about capturing the essence of something. And I think that that's something that paint can do in a way that's really beautiful and inspiring and engaging. The idea of the double-sided person, as I've gotten older, it's really about coming to terms with, this is how I look, this is how people view me, but then there's how I identify myself on the inside. And so those things are often in conflict. Through conflict, we come to catharsis, we come to understanding. That a lot of times I'll have the figures kind of exploring each other's hair as a way of creating a sense of intimacy. Because I think it's important for people to have to think about these things and not just have an initial reaction or be told what they should feel from a painting, but have to sit and kind of contemplate and think about it. Are they struggling or are they hugging? Is she pulling her hair or is she playing with her hair? Like, what is happening in this image? And I think in that way, the figures start to address each other as human beings. My mom keeps asking me, well, how long are you going to be doing these topsy-turvies? I think that because it offers so many different stories that it can tell just with this idea of the double figure, especially in this time right now, it's really relevant because we are so divided. You have to find the thing that you really enjoy saying, and you keep telling it until you're done. I think that's the power of painting and visual imagery. It just creates a space where we can see ourselves reflected in these images, because everything is beautiful in paint.
That's our show. If you want to know more about the guests we featured, check out our Instagram page at Shades of Us TV and online at tv.cuny.edu. I'm Darryl Brown. See you next time on Shades of Us.